When you think about World War II, what comes to mind? Huge battles, right? But what if I told you it wasn't just a bunch of separate events? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at it like one giant, unstoppable chain reaction, a domino effect, where each piece topples the next, leading to a total global catastrophe.
So, where do you even start a story like this? Well, believe it or not, it doesn't begin on the battlefields of 1939. Nope, we have to go back 2 whole decades to the halls where peace was being negotiated. This brings up a really crucial question. How on earth did a treaty that was supposed to guarantee lasting peace after World War I actually end up planting the seeds for an even bigger, deadlier war?
All right, so first up, let's talk about the unfinished business from World War I. Everyone called it the war to end all wars, but it didn't really bring the stability everyone was hoping for. Not even close. Instead, it left the world just, well, reeling from all these economic and political aftershocks. And that is what set the stage for everything that was about to happen. You've got this huge gap between what people wanted and what they actually got. I mean, the world was desperate for a lasting peace, but what did they get? The Treaty of Versailles. And this thing was harsh. It slapped Germany with crippling financial payments and made them take all the blame for the war. Now, you mix that feeling of national humiliation with a global economic meltdown, the Great Depression, and boom, you've created the perfect storm, the perfect fertile ground for extremism to just sprout up and take over. Okay, so now we're going to see how all those simmering tensions finally just boil over. This is where the first dominoes really start to fall. You've got these aggressive new powers who are starting to push the boundaries just to see what they can get away with. And they're about to find out the world's resolve is, well, tragically weak. And right away, a powerful new alliance starts taking shape. So, when Italy invades Ethiopia, pretty much the rest of Europe is up in arms, condemning the move. But Hitler? He sees a golden opportunity. He comes out and publicly supports the invasion. This does two things. It makes his bond with Italy way stronger, and it sends a crystal clear message to everyone else. Hey, the old rules, they don't apply anymore. Just look at this timeline for a second. You can see how fast things started to spin out of control. Hitler's feeling pretty confident now, so he starts his own expansion. First, he annexes Austria. Then he moves on Czechoslovakia. And the whole time, his excuse is that he's just taking back land that was unfairly stripped from Germany. After that, he promises, okay, I'm done. No more conquering. Yeah, right. It was a promise he was never, ever going to keep. And this right here was the tipping point. In a move that was just absolutely stunning and completely cynical, two mortal enemies, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, cut a secret deal. What was the deal? They agreed to invade Poland together and just split it between them. This pact took the last big obstacle out of Hitler's way, and it was the final domino that sent the whole of Europe into a full-blown war. So the invasion of Poland basically lit the fuse. But this fire wasn't going to stay contained in Europe for long. Now we're going to see how the conflict just spiraled completely out of control, pulling in nations from literally every corner of the globe. And by 1940, this whole thing goes global. Japan, which had its own big imperial ambitions over in Asia, officially signs on with Germany and Italy. And just like that, you have the three main Axis powers. Their combined goals now stretch all the way across the planet, from the middle of Europe to the far reaches of the Pacific. Japan did not waste any time making its move. On a date you probably know, December 7th, 1941, it launched a totally devastating surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The plan was simple and brutal. Cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet in one single knockout punch. Look, Japan's attack was a huge gamble, and boy did it have an immediate impact. This one event completely shattered America's long-held policy of staying out of other countries' wars, isolationism. Just like that, the United States was pulled right into the center of World War II. Okay, let's just pause here for a second and really take stock of where things are. You've got America reeling from Pearl Harbor. You've got Axis forces just steamrolling across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. It seriously, genuinely looked like the Axis powers were just unstoppable. For the Allies, this was it. This was their absolute darkest hour. But here's the thing about wars. They often turn on one single critical mistake. And in this part, we're going to see how Hitler's own arrogance, his overconfidence, led him to make a fatal error. An error that would totally flip the script, change the entire momentum of the war, and finally
finally give the Allies a real fighting chance. So how did the comeback begin? It started with a betrayal. Hitler turns on his supposed partner, Stalin, and invades the Soviet Union. This opens up a massive, unbelievably brutal new front. And that catastrophic mistake? It pushes Stalin right into an alliance with the US and Britain. When you combine their industrial and military might, it all leads to one thing: the massive invasion of Europe that we all know as D-Day. So, what exactly was D-Day? Well, on June 6, 1944, the Allies launched the biggest invasion by sea in the history of the world. We're talking hundreds of thousands of troops storming the beaches of Normandy in France. This move established a desperately needed second front in Western Europe, and it really was the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. And this brings us to the final act of the war. The tide has completely turned. Now, the Allies begin the long, slow, brutal fight to push the Axis powers back on every single front. It's a grind that's going to lead to the total collapse of their regimes. So, in the year after D-Day, Allied forces just relentlessly push across Europe. They're liberating one country after another. And you can just imagine the pressure on the Axis leadership becomes absolutely unbearable. In Italy, the dictator Benito Mussolini is captured and executed by his own people. And in a bunker deep underneath Berlin, with defeat staring him in the face, Adolf Hitler takes his own life. This table here gives us a really clear side-by-side look at how things wrapped up. In Europe, the war was pretty much over. Hitler and Mussolini were defeated. But out in the Pacific, that brutal, bloody fight between the USA and Japan was still raging. It was going to take a terrifying, brand new kind of weapon to finally bring the whole thing to an end. And here they are, the final devastating dominoes. In August of 1945, the United States unleashes a power the world had never seen before. It drops atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was on a scale that was just unimaginable, and it forced Japan to surrender. Finally bringing World War II to a close. And just like that, the deadliest conflict in human history was over. But the very weapon that ended the war also kicked off a brand new, and you could argue much more dangerous chapter for humanity, the nuclear age. You see, the chain reaction didn't actually stop in 1945. It just changed. Which leaves us with a really chilling question to think about. What happens when the next domino falls?